From Cypress Radio in Cypress, Texas, you've tuned into the Special Ed Section 504 Radio Hour, and I'm your host, Louis Geigerman. Welcome back. Today, we're going to do an interview kind of different than what we've done in the past. I mean, I'm going to be talking to people about things that are directly related to special education in 504 in the United States, although I've deviated from that sometimes on some interesting topics. This one's going to be about about a program in Israel that's really fascinating. Some of you that listen to the show every week know one of my dear friends, one of our dear friends, a speech pathologist in Israel. I did an interview about speech pathology, Israeli style. So this is going to be a little different from that for sure. Today, I'm going to be bringing in Major Tiran Attia. Now, he serves as the Director of Special in Uniform, which is an innovative Jewish National Fund, USA, supported program that integrates young people with autism and other disabilities into the Israeli Defense Forces, and in turn, into Israeli society. Now, after their service, Special in Uniform helps usher graduates toward a self-sufficient life through employment or other meaningful societal involvement once they are discharged from the Army. Over the course of his distinguished 30-year career in the Israeli Defense Forces, Major Attia commanded a tank, the IDF's Technology and Logistics Forces Training Program, and the Sar-El program for Army volunteers from around the world. So, with no further ado, direct from Israel, by the way, today, I want to welcome Tiran Attia to the Special Ed Section 504 Radio Hour.
Thank you so much, Lou, and I'm so glad to be interviewed in your show. I'm delighted that you find this topic interesting for your audience. As for me, I know this is an amazing program, and I'm bribed. I can say that I'm bribed because I love each one of the participants, like if they are my own personal boys and girls. And some background about the program. The program started somewhere 30-ish years ago when I call it a good Meshuga. His daughter was with the Williams syndrome, and she saw that her sister is going to the army, becoming an officer, and she came to her father, which was a very high-ranked officer, and she asked him, "Why not me?" And he had no answer for her. He couldn't tell her, "Look, you are disabled, so this is why not." So he started something in which he took her all her school and communicated with Professor Feuerstein from Israel, which was an expert about inclusion during the old days. But unfortunately, this program started 2 years, and after 2 years, there was no one to take it over, and it was some kind of stopped. And fast forward to 2006, and this is my personal story. How did I become an advocate for people with special need? In 2006, and I will make a very long story short, I led convoys of supply and ammunition and everything that was needed for the combat fighting units during the Second Lebanese War. And the Hezbollah launched thousands of missiles toward the state of Israel. And unfortunately, one of those missiles exploded very near my convoy. And I found myself after that explosion in a very, very white room, a lot of bright lights. And I was sure that I'm in God Induction Center somewhere. And I hope that the door with the angels will open. But when I came to my senses, I found myself in Bet Holim Ziv, in Hospital Ziv in Tzfat, up north. And at that moment, like all creature, you want to see that you are functioning. and I tried to move my legs and hands, and nothing happened. So I found out very toughly that I'm paralyzed neck down out of the trauma, because the doctor, when they came and they said that there is no problem with my spine or physically, there is no reason why I am not moving. So there I was in pain, a lot of pain all over my body, but I couldn't feel nothing. So in Israel, there is a lot of, during wartime, a lot of delegations, a lot of groups are coming. And one of the groups that came, they were on uniform, but you can see that they are not really typical soldiers. Some of them were on wheelchairs, some of them were looking differently. And one of them in particular with the Down syndrome started to approach my bed, and she said, can I pet your hand? And I looked at her and I said to myself and to her even, what do you want from me? You see me here in my soul. There is no chance for you to touch me. I don't want no one to be part of my agony. And without any kind of notice for me, she took her both hands and pressed my left arm very, very strongly. And after a while, she left that grip, and I saw that that grip was very, very strong, because I saw the mark of her fingers on my left hand. And she took a couple of steps back and she said, "Akol yeh beseder, everything is going to be all right." And they left, and I waited for a miracle. But miracle did not happen at that moment. So after a while, I started to feel twinkles in my toes. And when I say while, it could be that it passed 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, I don't know. I lost track of time when I was at the hospital. So I started to feel twinkles in my toes, and suddenly all my body was some kind of surrounded with electrical currents that I started to feel something which was totally forgotten from my body. The only thing that I can compare it, it's like if I'm being held by someone who loves me and protects me like a mother. And after a while, I started to move my legs and hands after 3 very, very long and challenging months. I was back on my legs, walking, limping at first, using canes, using every kind of mechanism for me to move. And I'm so glad that that lady brought back the willing for me to live. So I made a vow to dedicate myself to people with special need. I didn't know how I'm going to do it. I didn't know how I'm going to do it. I don't have any background. I was a military guy that I know how to fight or help those support those who are in a combat fighting unit. So having said that, I try to find things that I can do for people with special needs. And we made some kind of a contribution to the community, in which we brought groups to the army, but no one really make any kind of efforts in order for them to be implemented within. So in 2014, I discharged from the army, and a very good friend of mine told me, "Tiran, I have an idea, and I know that you are one of those a good meshuga, if I can use this phrase." And he said, "Look, I think that we can do something in order to make people with special needs live better. They will be treated better, and it will be and it will be through the army." So we in 2014 made a ceremony, some kind of a welcoming ceremony. And during 2014, another war, the Gaza war started, and there was a blockage of the aerial space of the state of Israel because of missiles from the Hamas. But two airplanes still got inside the state of Israel. One of them was a businessman, a solidarity mission of a business men and women that led to business, and the other one was the JNF, Jewish National Fund USA, and they came to the base and they want to hear about the Iron Dome, about the tunnels, and my English was not so good, or is not so good as they say. And my friend told me, Tiran, there is a group here from the JNF and they want to hear about the program, about the tunnels, and I gave a full lecture about it in my broken English back then. And we made it that ceremony for the special need kids. The parents were there, their siblings were there, and there was no dry eye in the audience, including those who came from the US and they did not speak Hebrew whatsoever. So at the end of that ceremony, two nice ladies came to me and they said, we are from the JNF, Jewish National Fund. We are raising funds for programs within Israel. We are offering you to participate in this program. In your program, the Special in Uniform program, will be part of the JNF. And me, as a typical Israeli, is very, very skeptical about those who want to raise funds for you. But 2 weeks after, I can say that miracle happened. I got a call from area code 212, and back then I didn't know no one, from Manhattan, from New York. And at the other line was a good friend of mine, as for today, Yossi Kahana, and he said, Tiran, we decided that you are going to be part of the affiliates of JNF. And I was sure that my friends are fooling me, and I waited to see where is the candid camera. And I can say that history was made at that moment, and history is yet to come. So what we did from that moment on, when we have some budgets, was we started to make it much, much professional. So we took all the data that was collected 30 years ago and analyzed it. And so what were the failures that they faced during those days? What had changed that brought us to the situation that we are now facing? And we built a model of a three-phase model. The first phase is analyze each one's ability. Our motto or our ideology says that everyone has an ability. You have to find it. Everyone is talented, even if it is moderate, even if it is a simple job. We have to find it, and when we are finding it, the second thing is to boost it, to empower it in any way that can be. If it is mentoring, if it is horseback therapy, physical therapy, any kind of therapy that can give or boost self-confidence, for example. Any kind that really boosts the ability of the individual. And from the other side, we started to educate the army about the importance and the challenging that they are going to face when they will have people with special need in their unit. And we started to induct people with special need into the army. And I can say that at first it was very, very challenging because there was a huge ignorance about people with special need. And I can say now that this ignorance was not demolished at all, but the level of ignorance due to special in uniform program is much lower. So all the things that we are doing, life skills, other skills, occupational skills, everything that we are doing at the two phases is leading to the third phase, in which we are finding jobs for them at the Israeli labor market, which is very, very important in two ways. First, they have a reason to wake up in the morning. This is an important issue. It means that someone is waiting for me. It means that I am important. It means that someone is taking care of me. I'm not alone in the world, which is very, very important, especially for all of us, and especially for people with special needs that through all their life, they were some kind of neglected. They were put in segregated schools or segregated classes. They hadn't have the friends that are surrounding them. So from that moment on, when we find jobs for them, we are still satelliting them and see that everything is in order. And later on, we found out that there are so many people with special need that are some kind falling between the chairs. And what happened, they are getting at the age of 16, they are getting a letter from the army that says, you are not part of. So now what can I do? I want to contribute. I want to serve my country. And we are trying to find places for them within the army. So we opened our spectrum of different ability for people with hearing impaired people, blind, CP, cerebral palsy, which are on wheelchair. Even sometimes we know that they cannot do nothing. We know that they cannot do nothing, but the added value of them being in the base, the other are looking at them, the other are socializing with them. It is very, very important for all whom concerned. Yes.
Let me say this. And I'm sorry to interrupt. I think people really need to understand the reality here is that Israel has mandatory conscription for everybody, and it's and so it's almost a rite of passage, to be in the military. So like you said, you get that letter, like, okay, you're going to go into 18. Of course, a lot of kids take gap years, right? Before they go in. But it's, to not, and the conversation is, okay, I'm going off to, I'm going to be inducted, wherever, for the conversation between the kids or, wherever they're going. By the way, I had the unique privilege to witness an induction ceremony at Akko one day. I mean, we wanted to see the Akko prison, but that day we got in, and then they closed it because they were doing an induction ceremony. I was like, wow, this is when they're actually, brought into the IDF, which was kind of cool. But anyway, it's so part of the Israeli, as you said, a part of Israeli society. So you get it's like, I'm going into you find after they get out, right, the conversation among they make lifelong friendships when they're in the idea, when they're doing their time and they do their service. And then the good discussion is, well, what unit were you in? And then you have individuals with challenges that were kicked to the curb. They weren't part of this discussion, right? They were out of sight, out of mind. So what's so powerful is y'all found ways to, integrate these kids into something that was meaningful. And that's something, of course, I wanted to get into that later, but that's something they need. We don't have mandatory conscription in the US, but dadgummit, there are a lot of, the US military could learn a lot by doing that. I mean, there are talents that individuals have that could most certainly help the military. And I'm thinking that Israel is so far ahead in being able to do that. Now, I understand the JNF kind of helped nudge you along and help provide the funding, but still, it's a beautiful thing. And but the interesting thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is they get full commissions, when they're in the program, correct?
Yes. Totally.
Right.
They are like all the other soldiers.
Right.
Totally like all the other soldiers.
Right. So they, I mean, they do their induction ceremonies like everybody else. But one thing that really caught my eye originally, because when I first heard about the program, God, how long was it? Was before you came to Houston. Before you gave that presentation where I had met you. I don't know if you remember if I met you, but we did meet. But one thing that really got my eye was the unit with kids with autism spectrum disorders that were looking at the aerial photos. Could you tell me about that? Because, you know, by the way, people can look at I mean, this is online. It's on YouTube somewhere about this unit. You got to hear this story. This is really something. I'm sorry, Tiran. I wanted to make sure people understood in context that there's mandatory conscription and why it's so part of Israeli society. Okay, but tell me about the autism unit you originally had set up, please.
I will start with the draft. At the age of 16, you are getting a letter from the army that says, prepare yourself, 2 years from now, you are going to be belonging to the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. And people with special needs getting the same letter that says, sorry, you have that kind of a disability, so you are not part of. And from that moment on, it's some kind of a cane stain that stays forever. So the first question that pop up between two teenagers in Israel is, what are you going to do in the army? Which unit you are going to the parachuter, to the armor forces, to the intelligence, or whatsoever? And what someone with special need will say, I'm not being drafted at all. So we are going to change, and we are changing this paradigm. I will go to the army with those limitations that I have. And this is the beauty of special in uniform. We are trying to give them the ability to be part of. No one wants to be left aside. And you know, another thing is when they are graduating, when everyone is graduating and they are finding and they are going to the Far East or to South America or wherever to make the big trip after the army, the first question that pop up, what did you do in the army? And think of someone with special need that is not part of the conversation at all. He's been again left off. And then later on, all his friends from the reserve. So not serving the Israeli army or the state of Israel means that you are going to be doomed to some kind of being at the margin, so at the marginal place of society. This is from one hand. And as for the autistic boys and girls, how did all this idea jumped off? I don't know if you remember the Columbia shuttle that was getting inside the orbit, and it was spread around to all over. All the scientists want to see the dashboard, what the pilot saw just in the last moment before the explosion. And no one knew how the dashboard was managed, because they have only one camera that looked from the dashboard outside to the room, to the cockpit. So what happened was that the chief scientist of NASA is a Jew, and his son, during Friday night through Shabbat dinner, called his father to come and join them for Shabbat dinner. And he said, I have a lot of work. And I said, okay, what are you looking at? So he tried to explain, because he was very polite and very respectful to his son, which was autistic. And he said, I want to see that and that and that. And he said, very, very simple. Look at the reflection of the helmet. It's very, very small, but the reflection of the helmet, it was some kind of a mirror. And the pilot himself looked at the dashboard. But the scientist didn't think out of the box. And this is how everything started. So they met one of the guy in the intelligence in Israel, and the rest was history. So they assembled a group of very, very high qualified but autistic boys and girls that can see things that we cannot, that they can focus much more directly and much more efficiently and much more rapidly than we. And they won't see the exact thing, they won't understand what they are seeing, but they are seeing those dots that it could take a professional guy 2 hours or 3 hours to differentiate them. And they can do it in an instant. So this is how they are saving life, and they are helping the efforts of the safety and security of the state of Israel. And now we are going to reopen a new group with the cyber unit in Israel, very high qualified computer boys and girls at the age of 18. And they are going to be candidates for the 8200 group unit in Israel. And this will be the cyber unit of Special in Uniform, very high savant, talented boys and girls. And all of those will succeed to pass the first draft check. They will be part of the intelligence. They will be part of those who are analyzing. I don't know if tomorrow you will hear that there is a nuclear that exploded in Iran. It could be that someone from Special in Uniform did it. So the sky is not the limit anymore.
So tell me one thing though. So tell me that in that unit that I was alluding to. So you look at aerial. What my understood was is you look at the aerial photos didn't exactly tell you where all those rockets were coming from Hezbollah. But what this group did was they were able to find things in very minute details, and they were actually able to discover rocket location that nobody else could. Isn't that what happened?
Yes, this is what happened exactly.
So they saved countless lives by doing that. I mean, just
absolutely, being part of this. I could imagine that none of them even knew what they are doing, how they are saving life, but still, facts are facts.
Yeah, yeah. Well, neurodiversity is so important. There was another story that you told you talked about. I want you to tell it, not me. But as I recollect, there was a individual that didn't have legs, as I recollect, didn't have legs, and was in the Air Force. Wasn't there a story about that as well?
He was a CP. Yes, he's a CP. Yes, a brilliant. That only two organs are functioning in his body. It's his right hand and his brain. And he speaks 3 languages. And he was in charge of all the doctor's appointment, 4,000 of them, to all over the year. He knew by heart all the ID numbers of the pilot at that base. So it's amazing to see that guy on a wheelchair that looks different, still can contribute and be part of the amazing IDF. Yeah. And that guy controlled the clinic. He was the administrative manager of the clinic.
How about that? There was another one though that I understood that didn't have legs, and what became a pilot. Am I right about that? I thought there was one that became a pilot.
No. I think that you are mixing with two other stories.
Oh, sorry.
You are talking about Pinky, the guy that was the commander of the brigade in Gaza that lost his legs during the attack from the Hamas, and he got back after he recovered. He lost his 2 legs, but still he was getting back to be part of the brigade that he was commanding on.
I see. And he got married. I think he married somebody that was part of.
He married the officer. Yes.
I'm sorry. You know, it was a
It's
few
okay.
years ago, you know, listen, there are a few brain cells that go away as I get older. So what can I do? Uh, but, you know, wow, that's really incredible. How, let me ask you, you were talking about it in your original narrative, how you, tell me how you guys really analyze each person's strengths or shall I say, um, their their unique abilities to funnel them in a particular um, part of the IDF. How do you do that? What do you and who what support people do you have to think about to be able to give that input? Ron? So there so let's bring people up. I'm sorry there was a break there. There was a storm and a power outage in Israel, so we had to have a little break there. So so Tiran, what I was asking you just before we had the break. So tell me what is the process that you all go through in determining individual strengths? I mean, you're talking more. You're looking. The problem is that I see so often. Everybody looks at the weaknesses that an individual has, and you have to look at that. I mean, there's certainly some limitations that we have to be mindful of, but in the process, it sounds like what you all really do is really focus on the strengths and see what strengths the individual has, and then from there find out where they go. So can you tell me the process, and also who do you bring in to help you? I mean, you talked about hippotherapy, you talked about that, support services. What type of professionals do you bring in to kind of help it and assess that?
Okay. The whole idea is focusing on the strength and ability of each individual, which means that almost 2 years sometimes it's taken us for analyzing each one's strengths. So we are starting at the ages of 16 or 17, and they are starting, and the individual and all the candidate are starting to come to the bases once a week. And we are being helped by our social workers, psychologists, the commanders, the guides, and we analyze each one's ability, which means that to all their process of volunteering pre-army, they are being analyzed, which means that if we see that someone has a strength of a delicate issues that he can deal with, or he can do a repetitive work again and again without getting bored, or if he's intelligent about keen about puzzles, for example. So all those skills are being at the end implemented by taking the jobs within the army, that the army says, okay, those are the list of jobs that I need. And our professionalists side by side with the army professionalists making some kind of a nice fabric or nice puzzle that see that strengths go to the job that requires someone with the skills that each the individual have. And we are starting to get also with the dreams of each one of them. For example, if someone wants to be, for example, a chef or a cook or a conditor or any kind of kitchen duties that he wants to do, so be it. So we are trying, some kind of striking that and giving them some kind of course and everything according to his ability to understand, to absorb this. If someone wants to be an apprentice to the mechanic, so be it. We have some that loves to deal with cars and get their hands dirty and they want to see grease and oil. So they are taking care of this kind of thing. For example, in the transportation center in Israel, the the air in each tire must be measured to see that it in the exact PSI needed. Very boring job, but some of our kids loves to do it because first they have something to do. Second, they have a purpose to wake up in the morning, and if you are explaining to them the importance of
you muted yourself. You need to unmute. Oops. You're still muted. Sorry, folks. Sorry, we had a brief break. So
Okay.
The last thing we were talking about was that it gives them a mission to get up in the morning, meaning to get up in the morning.
And the pride to wear the Israeli Defense Force uniform. And having said that, we are also explaining that those clothes or those uniforms that they are wearing, this is not new one. Those are in second hand, and probably someone which was, I don't know, in the Gaza Strip or in Lebanon or any kind combat fighting user could have been wearing them. So it gives them also sense of pride because they are part of something which is much, 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 much bigger than them, or bigger than the mission, or bigger than special in uniform. It's defending the state of Israel. And I think also, if we are looking at the global way, the strength of the Jews in the diaspora and the strength of the Israel are combined side by side together. And strong Israel could lead to strong diaspora communities. And we see now that sometimes we see that Israel is being punched in the media, and immediately, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months after, you see anti-Semitic activities all over the state of the US, for example. So when you are bringing that kind of initiative, like Special in Uniform, it's amazing to see that the difference that it does to all over. And more than that, we are bringing Special in Uniform to the US. And we have two duplicates according to our model in South Carolina and in Virginia, the Marshal offices. So from a tiny state in the Middle East that is surrounded with enemies, still the state of Israel, the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, find time for people with special needs. And I can tell you tomorrow morning, if the chief of staff will decide that we don't need special in uniform, the army will still function. The army will still defend its country. But the beauty of it is, despite all the challenges that the IDF sees in front of his eyes, still they have time and resources and attention for people with special need. And it's such a beautiful way to see it.
Well, I think we're always told that Israel is going to be a light into the world. And certainly I can't think of a better way of really illustrating it by programs such as this. I'd like to go back a little bit if I could. Man, you said it so eloquently. If anybody's listening to this and they're not having a tear drop from their face, it's just so incredible, the program. I'd like you to talk to me about how, because by the way, I'm really glad to hear that you all are talking to the U.S. military, because I think there are certainly things that the military, I think it would be great if we could have a similar kind of program with the U.S. military. But the interesting, what I'd like to find out from you is military people. I don't want to put down the military, but military people sometimes can get really extremely pig-headed. I don't know, or shall I say, hauser-headed, but getting through the ignorance and getting through various individuals in command to be have acceptance of these individuals. How have you been able to kind of cut through that and really change shall I say, the consciousness, and really deal with that ignorance? Because I'm sure there was widespread when you, particularly at the beginning, there's probably still some today, but how do you deal with that?
With a lot of patience, and I can tell you that we fought so much, and we had so many challenges with so many commanders that say, look, I am training war machine. I don't have time for compassion. And this is what the army does. The army train war machines. And if you are going to be some kind of a compassionate, or going to feel mercy for your enemy, probably, I don't want to compare it to Russia now, what is happening with the Ukraine, in which you hear about so many that are dead and so many buildings are exploded. With no, so we are not, as for now, I can tell you that we are building war machine in the IDF, but with a golden heart, which means that only those who wants to harm us will be affected by the strength of the IDF. And I can tell you that if the chief of staff is coming to our annual event, especially in uniform annual event, and says on a stage in which 400 audience says, this program is one of the most important program within the army, it says it all. And it is infiltrating to the last soldiers, and this is the atmosphere of the state, the army, of the commanders. And it was not like this 7 years ago. 7 years ago, we had some very challenging commanders to change their mind. But when they see the added value, when they see that they are contributing, and more than that, unfortunately, in our days, 1 out of 40 is born with any kind of disability during labor, so in every family, if you have personally someone with special need in your family, or you know someone with special need, so the circles, as for today, there is no one that is not having someone or connected to someone with special need. And it some kind of became some kind of I don't want to say trend, but the Israeli society is more open to and more compiling to people with special need, and we see it everywhere. There are seats for people with special need. There are kindergartens that are playgrounds, outdoor playgrounds that are accessed in the Israeli television. You see now the description for hearing impairment.
Closed caption. Yeah.
Yes, and handy. So it's going toward this revolution. And I think that even being modest or being unmodest, 7 years ago, it was not like this. And I think that we started some kind of a revolution, that now people are more accepted within the Israeli society.
You know, it's interesting, you know, and I have Jew and non-Jew, they'll listen to the show, but it's, I don't know, in the Jewish community for the longest time, there was a period of time I look back, it just seemed to be an attitude. Now, I'm not saying in the last, I'm saying maybe 10 years ago or beyond, there was a thinking that, oh, it didn't happen to us. I mean, all our kids are perfect and everything is hunky-dory, and it's we need to help everybody else out that are non-Jews. And then we find out, no, we have challenges just like everybody else. You know, we have kids with different talents and different challenges, but you know, it's basically what you just said is that this program has raised consciousness significantly, and it's interesting too in doing it in the military, because as you say, you're in the military is in the business of breaking things and and protecting. I mean, that's what they do. I mean, but with a compassionate, but with the IDF, they do it with more of a compassionate eye than you find with other military forces. So it's just kind of it's a beautiful thing. It's just a beautiful thing.
I totally agree. I could not agree with you more.
Yeah. Let me switch gears for the last part toward the last part of our interview. Okay. So we've had individuals that have been in the IDF. By the way, do you have any history on this photo that's behind me that we're showing from when that was, and anything about that? Do you remember?
Yes, sure. This is a landmark of Special in Uniform. I think that this picture was taken 5 or 6 years ago, and it was just before Yom Ha'atzmaut.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see the
Yom Ha'atzmaut is Israeli
Yom
Independence Day.
Ha'atzmaut, the 69 or the 68, and if you could go to the left and you see a smilish young lady. No, to my left.
Oh,
to
okay.
my left.
I see that
this lady that is saluting out on the left between the two boys, she has a remarkable story. She's part of a triplet, and her two brothers just inducted to the army, and she said, in the next Yom Ha'atzmaut, I want to be on uniform. And we promised her that we will do everything in our power to make her a soldier in the Israeli army. And this picture was taken 2 days before she was actually inducted. And there is another picture in that serial that all her friends are saluting her.
there.
So this is the story of this picture. An amazing moment.
Fantastic. So what I'd like to ask, though, and as we're in the last segment of this show, I want to talk about what you're doing when they come out. Okay, about the about providing jobs and vocational programs. I'll tell you, what we find. I mean, for instance, one of the things I do an annual lecture regarding individuals with neurodiverse backgrounds as autism spectrum disorders, and we find that 80%, there was an 80% unemployment rate for individuals with autism spectrum disorders. 80%. And here in the States, the unemployment rate is under 4% right now, okay, for everybody. Well, if you had any particular group that had an 80% unemployment rate, there'd be rioting in the streets. I mean, there would be rioting, there would be total chaos, because people have to be able to put food on the table, right? And have shelter. If you have an under 80% employment rate, you can't do that. So tell me how you guys are doing that, because I think that's an element that I know that has been fairly recent, that you have been doing, but I think it's every bit as that's the perfect rejoinder to what you're doing with Special in Uniform.
So, as you know, just the Jewish National Fund USA are our umbrella of funding in the US. We have the same umbrella here in Israel, in which we are fundraising from Israeli companies, Israeli very successful companies, like supermarkets like Mellanox, Nvidia in Israel, Checkpoint, some very, very important and very substantial companies in Israel. And they are adopting a unit. And when I say adopting a unit, they are financing it half, and the JNF is financing the other half. And the most important thing is when I say adopting, it means that later on they are accepting them to work according to their abilities in their, if it is the supermarket, if it is the factories, if it is the offices. And during the adoption time, which is sometimes 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, they are learning the skills of each individual, and the human resource at the adopting company is analyzing what they can do in their company in order to implement the abilities of each individual at the unit that they are adopting. So it's some kind of a circle within a circle within a circle. And for all of those who did not find the place at those companies, the Israeli labor market is a good-hearted labor market that accepts so many. And sometimes we also incent the CEOs of small companies to accept them, and sometimes even we are paying partly paying the scholarship or the hiring fee. So at the end, the unemployment rate from our side is much less than 40%. It stands on between 10 to 15. And what we see as a success is when they are staying at the same job for 3 months, and the big success is 6 months. And for all of those who are staying more and more and more, this is a mix match. This is a mix that made from heaven.
Yeah. Did I hear you say Checkpoint was also a Checkpoint?
Yes.
That's the cybersecurity. The cybersecurity company are a part of that.
When I started, I talked about the A200, the company, the unit, the cyber unit in Israel. And we are working side by side with them, and all those who will graduate from that unit will go straight to Checkpoint.
Interesting. Huh. I just became aware of that company recently. Interesting. Wow. And the employers, what have they found? I mean, now, what have they found about attrition, or have they found that, has there been any attrition, or have they found that most of these individuals are still employed? We're finding most of these individuals are employed there with competitive salaries. What have you all found? Have you done any longitudinal, had any feedback on longitudinal studies or feedback from the companies, or do you know?
Look, from our point of view, all of those who are working there are part of the company, and they are an integral part of the company. So what we are hearing from the surveys of the CEOs, that they are so welcomed, and they want them to bring their friends, because there is a huge added value. Because when we are looking at employee that is working, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, there is a friction on his daily life and his abilities. And he wants to shift work, but they have some kind of a benchmark. They see those special need kids coming each morning before everybody, leaving after the last one that are shutting the light out because they love the place that they are in. And having saying that, the CEOs and the managers, they want also people with special need to work with them because of the added value, and no less because of their dedication to the job and to the place that they are working in.
Yeah. Do they also so at the end, so the program is, well, it's been around a few years now. So do you all periodically have reunions of
Sure.
the individuals? Yeah.
We have an annual event that we are calling everyone, sending invitation to all those who left special in uniform, those who are still in special in uniform, the companies, the soldiers, and it could get to 2,500 participants at those reunions. And all of those who need any kind of help from us, after being in special in uniform, still they are part of special in uniform. They still get that they can get their treatment, still can get everything.
You hold on, you went mute again. You're muted. There you go.
Productive individual in the Israeli army.
Yeah. So you're muted again. Tiran, right now what we want to do is I want you to I want you to do a quick recapsule of what you're doing, and then I want you to tell folks how we have about I have about 5 minutes here. I want you, coupled with that, in a couple of minutes, I'd like you to also kind of tell people how they can support and contribute to this through with JNF. So if you could do that for us and just encapsulate and then talk about how people can help.
Okay, Special in Uniform is a program that really changed the face of the state of Israel, how people are how people with special need are being part of the state of Israel. And also, this is a light to the nation. When I said bringing it to another places, like the Netherlands, like the South Virginia, also in New Jersey, there is the fire department. And probably each one of you ask yourself, how much does it cost? And I say that it's not costing nothing. We invest in each individual $5,000 a year. And we are regrouping them in a groups that it's some kind of between 12 to 20. So it's, if someone wants to adopt a unit, it's $100,000 per year. And also we have treating center like dog therapy. It's $36,000 a year for 2 courses that we are making. Horseback therapy. There are a list of charts of things that can happen, but if I will leverage it, it will $5,000 per each individual in our program. You can find the links to donate at the JNF. You can.
That's the Jewish National Fund, everybody.
Jewish National Fund website. And the most important thing is in this manner that in Jewish National Fund, you can dedicate it to special in uniform. So if you want to, if someone wants to donate to special in uniform, he has to write down dedicated to special in uniform. Lou, thank you so much. Shabbat is almost in. Thank you for the great interview. And since we are not working in Shabbat, this is a time to be with the family. I'm so happy that I met you. And next time that I will be in Texas, coffee on me.
You got a deal, my friend. Listen. You're doing tikkun olam every single day when you do this. That means for all of us, repair the world. And I really do want to see you again when you come to Texas. Actually, when I come back to Israel, I'll look you up there too, if that's okay.
Welcome to Israel.
Yeah,
It's much more. It's much more fun.
Absolutely. Well, Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for being
Shabbat
on this
shalom, Lou.
show. Thanks for being on this show. We'll see you all on the internet, on the internet. See you on the radio. All right. Have a good
Okay.
Shabbat. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.